All right, I am not used to doing this 2 days in a row, but we got more support for an old archetype. This one, the Clear World archetype from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that I've been strictly dual monsters up to this point, so consider this a sneak preview of my plunge into Generation Next. I'm actually working on my video for the top 10 GX archetypes to support, and Clear World was on my list of consideration, and a couple of folks did request for it. But let's see if it moves up or down the list depending on what we got to work with here. So the Clear World archetype, up to this point, pretty bare bones. It only has 2 cards to its name, Clear World and Clear Vice Dragon, both released, I believe, in 2009. So if they look weak to you, just keep in mind it was 15 years ago. But now they're getting their much needed additional boost from the cards seen in the anime as used by Fujiwara, who you can see right here. He is the pseudo lead villain of the final arc. Now, with that said, it's only 5 cards, so certainly not robust by any means, but it is enough to offer a specific game plan that I'll explain here shortly. But going down the list, we start off with Clear Phantom. He's the searcher of the deck. You can discard him and one other card to add 2 cards from your deck that are either Clear World and or spell traps that mention it. So Clear World obviously exists, but in this list, there's only one other spell or trap that mentions Clear World. So it makes me think this is just a precursor for more Clear World support to come later down the line. But for now, what you'll be able to search with him is Clear World and Clear Wall. Next effect, you're unaffected by the effects of Clear World. So this is an effect shared by all the Clear World monsters. And I guess this is the way that Konami adapted the fact that in the anime, the Clear World monsters don't have an attribute. And since they don't have attributes, it makes Fujiwara unaffected by Clear World, which looks at the attributes of monsters each player controls. So that's how they adapted that little niche aspect of the Clear World monsters. And then finally, if this card is destroyed, you can target one monster your opponent controls destroyed, and if you do, send the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck to the grave. So not necessarily the greatest effect nowadays, but this is basically the effect that this monster had in the anime. Next up is Clear Rage Golem. Allows you to, when normal or special summon, attack directly with your monsters that mention Clear World for that turn. So he's 1600, he's 1200. I guess it depends on how easily you can get more other monsters on board. Clear Vice Dragon only gains attack when it attacks a monster, so it doesn't really gain much from the fact that it could attack directly. Next effect, you're unaffected by the effects of Clear World. And then finally, when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can inflict 300 damage to them for each card in their hand. So again, an effect adapted straight from the anime. Next up is Clear Cube. Unaffected by the effects of Clear World. During your main phase, you can normal summon one monster that mentions Clear World in addition to your normal summon set for the turn. So that's one of the ways that I guess you'll be able to bring out more monsters. He himself doesn't have any attack to work with, so it doesn't really matter if he can attack directly. And then finally, if this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field by your opponent, you can special summon a monster from your deck that mentions Clear World. So a nice little floater to be able to go into your direct attacker, to be able to go into your guy who can ram into another monster and get rid of an opponent's threat, as well as the next guy that we'll see here, which is Clear Vicious Knight. So this guy is a level 7, just has 2300 attack, but you can tribute summon him by tributing one monster that mentions Clear World. So the go-to combo here is the summoning of Clear Cube, gain the additional normal summon, use it to tribute for Clear Vicious Knight. Is it worth it? Well, he gains attack equal to the highest original attack of a monsters your opponent controls. So basically, unless they have a way to increase their monster's attack, he's going to be stronger than anything your opponent throws on the board, which is very critical because this other effect makes it so that your opponent cannot activate the effects of special summon monsters with attack lower than this tribute summoned cards. So he's not going to work if you float into him with Cube, but if you do tribute summon him, like I said, he's always going to be stronger than your opponent's monsters, which basically means that anything that they special summon won't be able to activate their effects. So a nice, powerful floodgate to have against the opponent. And then finally, we get into Clear Wall, which is a continuous spell that allows you to, once per turn, search out a monster that mentions Clear World from your deck if you control Clear World. So being able to bring out any of these 4 guys, as well as your Clear Vice Dragon. Monsters that mention Clear World cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, you take no battle damage from battles involving them. So a nice little protection. You turn off your opponent's special summon monster effects, as well as preventing your monsters from being able to be destroyed, which is kind of, I guess, conflicting with some of the effects that you might have on board. I mean, it's nice to have the battle protection, but I would have also liked the ability to, say, ram my cube or my Phantom into my opponent's cards to be able to destroy their monsters or to be able to get a float through cube. And then finally, while you control a level 7 or higher monster that mentions Clear World, all effects of Clear World are applied to your opponent regardless of the attributes they control. So that's a pretty decent effect. If we look at Clear World right here, there are some nice effects to be had with this effect, such as being able to look at your opponent's hand, inflicting burn damage to them, making them discard a card each turn. But you need to control a level 7 or higher monster that mentions Clear World to gain this effect. So that'll either be your Vicious Knight or your Clear Vice Dragon. All right, let's get into how this deck actually functions. All right, so now to go through the demonstration, and this deck isn't going to combo for days. It's not going to spam, but it does have a lot of good control elements, and I'll showcase the go-to move right here. You just need to open up with Clear Phantom, and then Clear Vicious Knight or Clear Cube, and then any one other card to discard alongside Clear Phantom. Alternatively, if you don't get Clear Phantom, then opening up with the two spells Clear World and Clear Wall would be sufficient as well. So you use Clear Phantom's effect to discard self in that one other card to add Clear World or 2 spell traps that mention it. So we'll grab Clear Wall and Clear World. Activate the Clear World, activate Clear Wall. Clear Wall, once per turn, we can add a monster from deck to hand that mentions Clear World. So we will grab the one that we don't have. So we have Vicious Knight, we'll grab Cube. Cube allows us to gain an additional normal summon, and Clear Vicious Knight can be tribute summoned by just tributing one monster that mentions Clear World, so we'll do exactly that with our additional. And this is the board. So again, wasn't super long, didn't take too much time to assemble, but it's a very powerful board nonetheless, because Clear Vicious Knight, Clear Wall, and Clear World are all going to have good floodgate effects against our opponent. So starting off with Clear Wall is that monsters that mention it cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, you take no battle damage from battles involving them. So your Clear Vicious Knight is good to go in battle. And then also, while you control a level 7 or higher monster that mentions Clear World, so in this case, Vicious Knight, all the effects of Clear World are applied to our opponent regardless of the attributes they control. We'll get to that one in a second. And of course, Clear Wall will get you those additional searches turn by turn for monsters that mention Clear World. Now onto Clear Vicious Knight. So this is the big play here. This guy gains attack equal to the highest original attack of monsters our opponent controls, so he's always going to be the strongest monster on board, at least compared to our opponent's monsters. And then the additional effect that he has is that your opponent cannot activate the effects of special summoned monsters with attack lower than this tribute summons card. So as long as he's been tribute summoned, anything our opponent puts on board is going to have less attack than it, because it's going to gain the attack of whatever our opponent has in addition to the 2300 that it already has. So anything that they special summon is not going to be able to activate its effects. It'll still get their continuous effects, will still get their effects in the hand or in the grave or if they trigger when banished. But as long as they're on the field and they've been special summoned, then they won't get their effects. And then finally, we have Clear World. And thanks to Clear Wall, all the effects of Clear World are going to apply to our opponent. And thanks to Clear Vicious Knight and really any of the Clear monsters, none of Clear World are going to apply to us. So first, our opponent is going to have to play with their hand revealed at all times. So that's a huge plus. Second, if they control 2 or more monsters, they can't declare attack. I guess I probably need some clarification here with how this works. Here, all effects of Clear World are applied to our opponent regardless of attributes they control. Not sure if that still requires them to control those 2 monsters or if this directly starts applying. Either way, Clear Wall protects your monsters from being destroyed. So this isn't the most pivotal effect, but still nice to have. Then, during their standby phases, they have to destroy a defense position monster they control. During their end phase, they have to discard a card. During the end phase, they take 1,000 damage, and they have to pay 500 life points to activate a spell card. So some nice burn damage in there, because again, this deck isn't going to spam a bunch of monsters, at least not in its core archetype, so good to get that burn damage in there. But the great effects really are that water effect, they have to discard a card per turn. The light effect, they have to reveal their hand at all times. And then the dark effect is, again, here or there. If it prevents your opponent from attacking whatsoever, then that basically makes it so you're good to go against any sort of monster effects, thanks to Vicious Knight, and battle destruction, thanks to Clear World. And also how to play the rest of the duel with the deck. So with Clear Wall, again, you'll keep grabbing those additional searches of Clear World monsters. So you can go through whichever ones you need, but Clear Rage Golem, if your opponent is able to do anything to your field, you can grab him, because when he's summoned, you can activate his effect to allow your Clear World monsters to attack directly that turn. So that's going to be 3,900 on board if our opponent doesn't have anything to increase Vicious Knight, in addition to that 1,000 that they took at the end of their turn. So that's 4,900 right there. If you go another turn, just going about this approach, you'd be able to take out your opponent by the 3rd turn. Now, obviously, that's a very slow way to go about it. It's just looking at the core structure of what the Clear World archetype is able to do and not looking at the various ways you can build a deck. But to that point, I would expect that they are going to start adding more to this archetype because of the fact that Clear Phantom sets themselves up for it. They say that you can add Clear World or spell traps that mention it, and to the current existence, there's only one spell or trap that mentions it. In fact, there's no traps at all that mention it. So by wording Clear Phantom that way, it tells me that they are planning to come with more Clear World support down the line. So it'll be interesting to see and keep an eye out for, but good to see an old archetype from GX getting support nonetheless. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, and I will see y'all later.